My story began with a death sentence.
My beginning is before AIDS.
She talked about this new disease. It was going to change the face of medicine in South Africa.
Very few of us had any understanding of the epidemic.
Really, I had absolute, complete faith in the fact that, science would prevail.
When the epidemic first came, I thought it really didn't concern us. It was a problem of white gay males in California, and that was a dreadful mistake because, as you've seen, from the 80s, we've become the worst affected country in the entire world.
We had HIV. We didn't have the drugs at that stage.
The drugs haven't arrived.
Who could afford to be on the antiretrovirals? And you were talking about $10,000 a year.
Yeah.
We had this real view that there was new hope. I think we were all a bit patient. We were saying, Mbeki comes to power and we need to allow him a bit of time to bed down. Same was true for Mantu.
What I kept hearing was, you wanted a policy on treatment, you've got it.
Some of the memories I have is of a lot of people dying, a lot of friends dying, personal confrontations that I had which were unpleasant with the former Minister of Health.
It was already known that the infection in children can be prevented, and yet they were still dragging off feet.
There was a bit of conflation of the issues. We then got into a bit of a debate which polarized us as a country.
As we grew, AIDS denialism hardened. As it hardened, we had to fight it harder. As we fought it harder, Thabo Mbeki, being a proud and arrogant man, hardened his position further, and unfortunately we got into a kind of, I think, vicious spiral.
There were very few people who supported us fighting Thabo Mbeki. And within the government itself, if there is a handful I can think of who stood up, it's a lot.
From an international perspective, we were embarrassed.
Bearing in mind that it's always been the case that an effective response will have to be a national response.
What moved and inspired and motivated you in those days was the personal interactions with people.
I think it's right to capture this history. And I think the starting point is the time I actually got appointed as the director of the HIV/AIDS control program in the National Department. I had been working in what was then Garankuwa Hospital, Medunsa, as a lecturer in obstetrics and gynecology, as well as a clinician in that hospital, and had applied for this position after being encouraged to do so by colleagues in the National Department. So on my first day, I started on World AIDS Day actually, in 1996, yes. And on that World AIDS Day, I traveled with the then Minister of Health, Mantombazana, not Mantombazana, Nkosazana Zuma, to three provinces. They were celebrating World AIDS Day, and so we flew from one province to another in the helicopter, and she was very quiet. She didn't say much. She wasn't somebody who spoke a lot. And I was very scared. I was very anxious. I was not sure if I'd taken the right decision about accepting this position, but I settled into the job. And then, the elections happened and the minister moved into another portfolio, and then the late Minister Shabalala Msimang took the position. At that time, I think the most pertinent and current issue was the prevention of mother-to-child transmission. That was the Uganda trial had just come out, and we started by organizing a huge mission to Uganda to see what they had done and to see what lessons we could bring. And I was optimistic. I was excited. I thought, wow, you know, if there's something that can be given for mother to child, let's jump on the bandwagon. Let's do it. You know, it's evidence-based, etc. We came back, and things were fine. Really, for the first couple of months, I think we were walking along the path that the international community was laying out and following the normative guidance. And then somewhere something happened. And I can only really, in my mind, remember the change happening with the emergence of the dissident dialogue. When that discourse came into play, the whole thing shifted. Everything shifted overnight. The particular people that I didn't know them, you know, I'd read about those dissidents in papers and other books before, but I didn't, for one instance, realize that they would be the source of so much challenge and controversy, and obviously there were many other sources of challenge and controversy. You know, the Durban 2000 conference. The whole thing about, you know, does HIV cause AIDS, and then everything went from bad to worse. It was just incredible. So we moved into that storm. We were not ready for it. None of us had ever envisaged it was going to come. And I kept going, you know, from my own personal perspective, because I actually was totally oblivious of the fact that anybody in leadership would believe things like, you know, the issues that were being advanced by the dissidents. You know, really, I had absolute, complete faith in the fact that, you know, science would prevail, that we would, you know, be temporarily distracted and then, you know, pick up and move. And day after day, it became clearer and clearer that that was not the route we were going to take. You know, we went deeper and deeper into this forest and into this storm. A handful of us tried to keep the conversations based on evidence, but there was a lot of pushback. And I can't say that everybody in government was convinced of the fact that, you know, garlic and lemons and whatever else would cure HIV. I think there was something that I today can still not describe that paralyzed the rest of the leadership into moving and saying and pushing back on this. So there were days and times when we had very interesting meetings, good meetings, where the people who are experts on the issue. So we believed, or at least I believed, that we would come to a point where sanity would prevail if we allowed for these voices of the dissident groups to be given space in a way, just so that it became clear how stupid and foolish the whole argument was. And so convening the panel of experts and listening to the arguments. I mean, that room was full of the best brains in the world on HIV, you know, people who had discovered the virus, who had worked with it, and who understood it back to front, you know. And then there were other people who clearly, you know, had not found anywhere else in the world where they could speak or say anything about this unscientific claims they were making, but were actually being given a very high-level platform in South Africa, saying the kinds of things that they said, you know. And I believed, you know, here we've had an open, transparent debate. Here the voice of both international, regional, and national experts has prevailed, and the chapter is closed. So, you know, when the dissidents get on the plane, we pick up our programs and we move. But that was not to be. You know, it just became more protracted, and it became much more difficult now, being in the program, having to work with the issues, having to prepare documentation, having to be in meetings, to actually keep pushing, you know. We kept working, we were implementing programs, and then out of the blue, you know, when I was still in the program, well, out of the blue in a sense that I hadn't anticipated that cabinet would come out with the next policy, which was to provide antiretrovirals to survivors of sexual assault. And I thought, okay, this is good. You know, we're moving, you know, we're pushing, and we actually are getting back into the space that allows us to get on top of this. But everything we did came at a cost, in a sense that, you know, we had a court case that we had to defend. We spent hours and hours. And what affected me personally was being a gynecologist, understanding the science and believing in the science, and writing things that I really knew were really stupid, you know, were not making sense. But because, you know, of the position I was in, of the portfolio I was holding, you know, I couldn't step, you know, out of that space and say, no, I'm not going to do this. I was convinced personally that it was easier and better, and at least it's my own personal style and strength to work from inside. You know, I didn't think that to perhaps walk out of my job and say, well, you know, I'll be an activist for real and be on the streets was going to necessarily make my life as an individual better, you know. If I left my job, I would want to go back to clinical practice, where I was confronted on a day-by-day basis with women who were not healing after cesareans, you know, women who were very ill, and I knew it was HIV infection, and we had nothing to give them, you know. So I felt it was going to be more frustrating to go back to that space, so I just kept my head down and just kept moving. There were many hours of work, many moments of absolute humiliation and abuse, you know, where you just took it. You took the punch on the head, on the face, straight on, and you woke up the following day and you kept going, you know. And for me personally, you know, I did this because I had made that commitment to very special people in my life to keep fighting, you know. I've lost a lot of family members. I've lost a lot. I've lost a lot personally as an individual, and I wasn't going to take, you know, a step back and say, no, you know, well, you know, it's too difficult, or it's too, you know. I mean, I had friends in the medical fraternity who felt that, you know, we were not vocal enough, you know, why aren't you refusing, why aren't you, and perhaps, you know, in hindsight, you know, when I see subsequently what happened, not on HIV as an issue, but the entire falling apart and rebuilding of our leadership, I only regretted why I hadn't been stronger in stating the issues, you know, because I think I'm brought up in a context of a culture, at least, where you respect authority, you do all these sorts of things, and not being a returned somebody who gone into exile and who fully was embedded and entrenched in the history of the struggle for this country. I preferred to listen and take cue from those who had liberated this country. So I thought, well, let me keep going. Let me keep going. The point at which it became very clear that I couldn't carry on anymore was, the fight for the treatment plan was fraught with days and nights of just hard work, pain, up, down, the good thing is that even within the people who were there, some of the MECs, some of the heads of departments from the provinces, were pushing. KZN went ahead with their program, Gauteng went ahead with their program, the Western Cape went ahead with their program. So I was comforted by the fact that even within the leadership there were differences, and the people who could make decisions on behalf of their provinces were moving forward and doing that. And I was holding on to those people like Premier now, Zweli Mkhize, Deputy Minister of Health, Gwenda Mokopa, who was really progressive in how she led Gauteng. So I thought, well, if these people are around, I'm in good company, so to say, So when we wrote the plan, the first draft of the treatment plan, and every time we got an opportunity to present it, it was cancelled, the meetings were cancelled. It just became harder and harder.
The meetings were cancelled by the minister?
Yes, the minister was cancelling the meetings and not giving us an opportunity to present this very critical document to Cabinet. A document we had been asked to produce with other members of other departments, Treasury, Departments of Health, provinces, experts, etc. And the Clinton Foundation at the center of it. It just became impossible, But finally, what then happened is, I think, because I started becoming more vocal in saying to the minister, I think we really need to push with the strategy. And so when she convened and established the task team that was going to oversee the writing of the plan, she just sidelined me, as a head of the department. They brought somebody in from the MRC who worked as the leader of the team. But I didn't mind, because it wasn't about me as an individual. The program was going to move, so we took the plan. That night we didn't sleep. We hadn't slept for nights. We wrote it and we rewrote it. I remember one Saturday afternoon, I just got a call from the late minister, and she wanted everything changed in that plan, including the proposals that we had made, the costings that we had made. Any reference to the people who had helped us, like the Clinton Foundation, had to be removed, and everything. And I couldn't understand, this sudden change, because at every point, when we finished the chapter, we presented it to her and other colleagues, and everything was okay. And that's when I started suspecting that, maybe this plan will never see the light of day, We then flew to Cape Town. There was a cabinet meeting convened. The then president was not in the country at that time. And the minister said, no, you're not tabling this plan, because you can't table this plan in the absence of the president of the country. It was around midnight, after we had finished the last of the paragraphs in the plan. And I just thought, no, it's not possible. That cabinet must sit. That cabinet must approve this plan tomorrow. Unfortunately, there were people who really were were on our side. You know, there were ministers, there were senior policy people in the office of the president who just said, no, it's going ahead. The president has given his go-ahead, even if he's not around, that the plan be tabled to cabinet, the plan be adopted, and that this becomes the policy of the South African government. So come 6 in the morning, after we had walked up and down the passages the whole night and had been abused right, left and center, we finished the plan, and then the time came to announce, you know, cabinet set. And because it had taken so long, you know, I think people knew what was in the plan. The ministers, most of them were happy with what was in the plan. Treasury had done the budgets for it. So it was just a question of them looking at it and approving it. And the plan was approved. So in that joy and excitement, post the approval, there was a press briefing, and the minister was very unhappy. She didn't even want to speak to me at that stage. You know, you know, I ceased to exist, I think, in her eyes at that point, which for me it was a victory, because look, what we had been fighting for had been achieved. You know? So the plan gets approved the end of 2003, and then we entered a phase that for me was actually more difficult than the phase of writing the plan, that of now getting the drugs, getting the tender approved, getting the medicines flowing into the clinics. And December 2003, the plan is approved. We are into 2004. It's May. I mean, it's January, it's February, it's March, and there's nothing happening. You know, the files are going up. The pharmaceutical division is meeting with the industry, Aspen, other people, but this tender for procurement is going nowhere. You know, and you know what I kept hearing was, you wanted a policy on treatment, you've got it, you know, so nobody must complain. So I said, Minister, but policy means getting the drugs in now. You know, it doesn't mean we've got a nice document on paper and it's on the shelf. And she said, well, these tablets, you know, you still haven't convinced me that they are not toxic, etc. And I said, but that debate is over. The cabinet has said it's done, you know. So, and it was that conversation, I think, that broke my spirit completely, because, you know, it was clear that for as long as it was possible and rational for the the tender documents to be approved by her, the drugs were never going to arrive. You know, and she didn't need a cabinet to approve that. She didn't need. She was just the only person there who could say yes or no.
So the tentacles of obstruction were reaching in.
Yes, and you see, the difficulty with what was happening was that when asked by the international community, we could always say yes, we've got a policy, so nobody could attack us, but its implementation was another story altogether. So that's what, you know, happened. So it wasn't going home, you know, on one of the afternoons when I had knocked off and faced the reality of my own family, people in my own environment, who kept asking me, when are these drugs arriving? You know, you people have been saying you've worked on the drugs and, you know, the cabinet has approved. And these are ordinary people. Like I say, you know, when I speak about community, I'm talking about my own family and my own cousins and everybody. And they were very ill people, you know, very educated, people who were contributing, you know, some of them teachers, some of them, you know, nurses, you know, some of, you know, my family is a family of people who love education. So, and they were just dying. People were just dying, and I didn't have a reason to say. I didn't have anything to say to them, you know. we didn't have enough money to buy those drugs in the private sector for everybody who needed them, even in that small group of people who were part and parcel of my extended family. And I think my soul just caved in, you know. So I went to see the minister, the late minister, and I said to her, look, I'm going to resign from my job and I'm going to leave. And she said, oh, why? Why are you leaving? You know, you're making progress. Isn't it what you've wanted? You've got now. You know, you've got the drugs. So now you want to run away because you know that what you have asked for is going to kill people. You know, so you don't want to be here when the toxicities come and whatever. And I said, no, Minister, that's not the case. You know, the drugs haven't arrived because you haven't signed the file that says the drugs should come. So I'm leaving because I'm tired of fighting. I'm tired of fighting for fighting against you or fighting against anything else that's standing in the way of me being able to go home and facing my family and saying, you know, in the next 2 weeks or whatever, there will be drugs in the clinics and you will get better and whatever, you know. I just, my soul can't do this. I can't, I said, in fact, my words to her was, I can't do this for you anymore. I can't lie on your behalf. I can't tell the country a story because, you know, the media was on us. You know, when are the drugs coming? When is the tender being signed? When is, you know. I said, I can't write a speech for you anymore on this issue because we're not going anywhere. So, because I can't do this for you, you know, when my phone rings and I know it's you calling me, I don't have the energy to pick it up because I don't really know what I'm going to do or say to you. So when I'm no longer useful for you or for the country, I think the best thing is to move, is to go, because I don't want to be seen as a barrier to progress or to furthering what people are asking for. You know, I'm happy that the policy has been signed now. At least I can look back and feel that I didn't give up. But I don't have the energy to spend another. It was April, May, I think, when I resigned. Another 5 months and until the end of 2004, still saying the same thing, because I said it's possible at the rate that you are going that it will take us a year to get the drugs in, and more people would have died, and I don't want to be around to see this. So, you know, and on that note, I just left. I didn't have answers. I think I stayed shell-shocked for a long time because it was bizarre. You know, what was happening was really bizarre. It was very, very strange. So, you know, I don't know who will answer the question. I think people have asked, people have written books, people have spoken to His Excellency Mr. Mbeki about what he was thinking. Well, you know, I think a lot of people have tried to look for answers. Everybody has come up with their own version of why and what they thought the government was thinking at that time. Those of us who were on the inside, sometimes you think you understand, but to be honest with you, for me, I think I don't think I will be able to understand why people who fought so hard to make South Africa what it is or what it could be couldn't see or what was happening with HIV, you know. And I think the impact of that is going to take a long time to reverse. In the same way as, I mean, you call it the second struggle, you know, and the first struggle isn't over, you know. The second struggle has yet to start.
It's a continuation.
Yeah, it's a continuation, and I just hope that in addressing these struggles concurrently and intertwined as they are, that we don't destroy ourselves as a people, you know, in South Africa. I've come back now after being in the UK, and I'm here now, and I've been in the AIDS Council, and it's toxic, you know. It's still very toxic. It's just strange that you know, and I'm trying and fighting very hard to not make it my story or my issue, but it's amazing. I think the HIV community and everything around this virus is toxic. It's toxic. Once people work in it, it does something to you, and it can either be something really good, or it can just be something that is terrible, you know. So I just I think it's right to capture this history, because our children will maybe face a different challenge, but they should know what happened with this. As a combination of many things, you know, yes, firstly as a citizen of the country, as an African woman, you know, as somebody who's worked, I think, almost all her life in government, you know, trying to push and making mistakes, going up, going down, doing everything, you know, not perfect, but as, yeah, I think much more as a betrayal of what I stand for. And sometimes when I think back, having allowed fear, you know, unfounded fear to prevail sometimes, you know, because I could, even if I was the only one, you know, I could have said, well, I don't want to do this and leave, and they'd find another director, you know. We don't, there's no shortage of people. And sometimes I ask myself, why didn't I just do that, you know? Because the memories you carry from having been inside, I think they stay with you for a very long time. And I think they affect even the way that you interact with what's happening now, in a way, in a subtle way. I saw it for a few very profound couple of months. I really had to go into a space that is quite spiritual, because I kept asking, you know, what kind of God does this? You know, what kind of God allows a country to liberate itself from something like what we had in this country, and then visits an epidemic like this on us? What kind of God would then?
Kind of cruel.
Yes.
Yeah.
What is this? You know, here now we're not talking about, you know, people being shot in the streets, or, you know, rubber bullets and things. We're talking about little babies, 3, 4, 5 months old, dying, you know, painful deaths, you know, and adults dying protracted, painful and undignified deaths. Why? You know, those things were playing in my head, you know, and I saw people, I lived with people who just disappeared in my eyes, you know, from being 80 kilograms to being 24 kilograms, and we were just carrying them like this. And these are brilliant human beings. These are people who had worked in the struggle and everything, and they were just dying, wasting away, and we didn't care, you know. The system at that point didn't care. We had discarded them as non-existent. We had said whatever they have is a conspiracy theory, and if they were victims, they were like collateral damage, you know. And that's what bothered me a lot. Yeah, that they just sort of became victims, you know. It's like what we hear when they shoot, you know. There was a police shootout. They were chasing a gang of hijackers, and somebody was passing by and they got caught by a bullet. That was our attitude to millions of South Africans who were saying, oh, well, this thing has happened, oh, but it's not really that bad. You know, you could eat a few of these vegetables and you should be fine. Why is everybody making such a noise, you know? And yet every weekend we were burying and burying and burying, you know? And the statistics are there. You can see where the mortality was happening between 25-year-olds and 42-year-olds. And yet we were saying no. We were in charge of the system. We were collecting the data. I understand that in that time, it probably wouldn't be possible. And then I say to myself, but you had people who understood, who had grasped it, who were putting it in front of you and saying to you, here is it, and showing it to you. You know, there's a difference between being ignorant of something, totally not understanding its implications, and therefore not acting because really you don't know anything, and your own people, your own scientists, your own, you know, community saying to you, people are dying. You seeing them, you know, you seeing them, you see them. You go to their funerals, you bury them. And then you come back and wear your policy hat and you say, no, everything is actually quite fine. This is where for me you know, because I kept, yeah, because it's not as if there weren't people that were living with HIV that were known to all of us, you know, whether you wanted to believe or disbelieve. You know, if you take somebody to the doctor and the doctor says this is what's wrong with this person and this is what you need to do to make them well and to keep them alive, that's what we do. But this time round, we said no, we need dissidents to come and convince us, we need this, we need, and as the longer and longer we procrastinated, the more and more people died, you know. And then, you know, the minister now, you know, shows the statistics, and how do we didn't have, there's very little we could hide behind at that stage, you know. We had gone to Uganda, we saw, we came back, the same navarapine, we gave it to our people. Now, what made it difficult to then make that jump from mother to child? Yes, navarapine. Women who have survivors of sexual assault, yes, dual therapy or whatever it is wanted to do. People who've got HIV, yes, you know, logically. You know, that's why it didn't make sense. If we had put a total blanket approach that says we don't even want to see a single antiretroviral in this country because this, then, you know, it was these stupid reconstructed arguments that made it difficult, where you would say, oh, it's toxic. And we kept saying, yes, the science is evolving. The science is evolving. You know, it will, even now, we are going to be faced 5 years from now with toxicities, with challenges, with side effects, but people at least are alive. They have to take their medication, they have to manage it, they have to, like everybody else who's got an illness, a cancer or whatever, you know. So it's that, it's just how the conspiracy theory hijacked us, and we refused to stop as South Africans. And in you know, we are a questioning community, we are a questioning country, we debate things, but this time around we just got totally, you know, I don't know what happened, but you know, now we're playing catch up, and it's incredible. And I just hope that we now improve our understanding of this by seeing it as a socially, economically, you know, culturally, behaviorally driven response, not just, you know, let's just make sure everybody gets the treatment, because that I think we will be able to do, but we then have to go inside ourselves as people, as South Africans, and bring the two historic fights together in a way, and look at, because, you know, somebody said to me the other day, HIV is like any other. It's a virus, and it behaves like any organism. It wants to live, So it finds somewhere to live and it lives. But what it's doing is it's exposing how we treat each other, how we live, And if you turn it like that, you then stop fighting the HIV issue as, let's stop this virus from moving from person to person and start looking at ourselves as people and how we treat each other in terms of our relationships, in terms of how we interact, in terms of how we support each other as communities. And that is how you prepare, that is how you in a way that you prepare your own family. If there's somebody who's got cancer, you do all the things, you prepare, you talk, you grieve, you counsel each other. Why is it different with this one? Why do we then stigmatize and discriminate? And I think that the pockets of silence come from a number of areas. Firstly, this whole thing about multiple concurrent partnerships, which we know drive the epidemic. We don't want to talk about these things. We don't want to talk about how people establish sexual relationships, how nature makes it possible for you to just sit in a room, look across the room, see somebody and say, oh, I think I like that person, and in less than 24 hours find yourself having sex with that person. It's about us as human beings and how we express ourselves. People do that. Even in this conference, people are going to be doing that. It's an AIDS conference. But there's a human aspect of us that we're not willing. That is why there was a hullabaloo about testing in schools. Because people want to believe that, young people mustn't know that adults are sexual beings, We portray it as, oh, it's going to traumatize the children to know if they are positive. Come on, if I have a choice of knowing my status at 15, knowing I'm positive, that gives me a good chance to get into treatment and have the choices other 15-year-olds will have in the future, you know what I'm saying? But we moralized about it. We got into a huff about it. We said, oh, the systems will never carry this. The system is carrying everything. Bad, good, mediocre, whatever. There's a lot of things that the systems in South Africa can't carry. We get bad service everywhere we go, So why is it that everything in this society is not working, but South Africans are not sitting down and dialoguing about this rainbow nation? What are we going to do about it? How are we actually going to make it work? There's a group of us on this side that's saying it's the responsibility of those ones who are leading, and look at what they are doing. They are wasting and then, there's the disenfranchised, who sit and say, well, I'm going to show my displeasure. I'm not going to go and vote. It's not going to help, And then, so there's still camps of you blame you, I blame you, you blame, I do this. It's somewhere along the line we're going to have to sit down and start a social movement on making South Africa work, really, really work as a country. And if we get to that point, on everything, my dear, the education system is a mess. Lots of people don't have jobs, But it's as if we want this cycle to just go on and on and on, And maybe it's in the way the system is laid out, I don't know, leadership makes decisions about things, they prioritize here, there. I don't know how you actually make a democracy a true one, even with the differences we have, even with the different issues we have. I think we could work harder at coming together as South Africans on issues than we are now, And I think the next challenge is going to be a social revolution, really. It's just going to be about people who are going to be so, angry about what they are unable to get as basics to live from day to day, And we can have a long theory behind, we've struggled for so long, we can't do this, we can't do that. But I also find a culture of dependency, you know, more grants. And this is, I think, what I'm struggling with right now. Is this what it is? Is this life? Is this what we're meant to be doing? You know, just this recycling of things and whoever, you know, if you are unlucky, you are just there, you know. And, you know, the levels of violence, I think, are an example of that. When people are really willing to die just so they can just get something from your handbag because you look like you've got something, it's very serious. I really think it is. And I think, you know, if I'm talking from where I sit, for instance, when I talk about messaging and communicating on HIV, I keep saying we're not being honest to the citizens of the country about how much this epidemic is costing us. We keep celebrating every time there's an announcement of more billions to treatment. But we forget that if we actually seriously looked at what the messaging is saying, you know, don't have unprotected sex. If we took that seriously on and we cut down the rate of new infections, we'll have more money to pay the teachers, to pay the police, because we won't spend all that money on health. So this is the dialogue communities must have. Instead of demanding, and then lapsing back into that very behavior that is costing us in terms of health care. You know, I think we and this is where the conversations are not going, because people are too scared. It's like, oh no, government has promised, yes, government said they're going to do that, so you can't ask these questions. But we must ask people that even in the context of liberation, you must take responsibility for washing your face, for crying out loud, clean your teeth, brush your teeth, be a human being. Don't wait and wait. Yes, you maybe don't have a job or whatever, but stand up, go look for one. You know, if you don't find it, I don't know. I mean, I just, you know, people say, oh, I've been looking for a job or whatever. Okay, if you don't have a job, well, maybe I can't help you, but at least if you understand and hear this message, don't then practice or engage in behaviors that will make you exposed. When you do then get a job, you're too sick at that stage. You know, there's a lot of, I don't know how we could have this intertwined dialogue on social issues and on HIV and on governance and how a country builds itself. I think, you know, we need something like that, and I mean, we need to be prepared to confront what that will bring out in all of us and say, okay, if this is who we are, how do we then collectively go forward with our weaknesses, with, you know, and mitigate our own humanity in a sense, you know, because if we do that, then, you know, we capture the climate change things, we respect our environment, we do all those things in a subtle way. Maybe we're not doing it openly, but subtly, it's gonna come. Yeah, I think there's a lot that is unsaid and spoken, and it erupts in strange places. And I think because we haven't reached the critical mass of these mini explosions, I call it, we keep brushing it off. You know, it just becomes a story. You know, oh, you know what they did? Yes, they did this. Or somebody hijacked this one. And but if you put all of those things together, they create a picture for you that is, for me at least, that's very concerning for this country.
The small incidents are easy to sort of normalize. But you're right, when you add them up, they become a picture of something.
You need, you know, it's almost as if you need an intelligence on that, you know. Instead of looking for arms or weapons of mass destruction, you should be out there quietly getting this from the communities and understanding what are the issues that are bubbling. Why did we get caught in the xenophobic attacks? How come we didn't anticipate? And if we did, how come our response was so, oh well, you know? It's this thing that I'm worried about, that, you know, even when we pick up the vibes, we can see there's this quiet, it's building up, it's building up, it's building up, you know? We just, you know? I mean, this guy that just got shot by police, we all saw it, you know? This man had nothing, you know? But they descended on him and they killed him. And it became headline story for 2-3 days. Do you think much will happen? No, it's gone away, you know. On the back of which you must then build, you know, as you find these stories, you feed them back, and we start answering people's issues almost immediately, you know, very responsive and saying, you know, okay, this is what you're feeling, let's immediately work with you to get to a better place. So I think there's that disjunction, it's very much focused on, oh, do we have this policy? No, we don't have it, so let's fight to have this policy. Then we get it, then we sit. We're not thinking beyond what happens after we've implemented this, and if we don't reach where we need to reach, how are we going to then move forward, you know? So it's a lot. It's a lot of work, of thinking, you know. And I just, you know, I'm interested to hear what young people are talking about these days, you know, because other than I'm interested because those are the leaders of tomorrow. Those are the people who are best placed to rescue or at least to shape this country. And I know, you know, just from prior to the local elections that, you know, they just feel disempowered. You know, they write their matric, they don't get jobs, they are very disenfranchised. No, I think, I'm keen to hear other people's experiences of it. You know, I'm you know, interested to speak to people who were on the periphery, you know, not very much inside. They look us on, so to say, you know, and to say, what is it that you were watching? What did you think was happening in your eyes, you know? And what would you have done if you were part of the group, some of us or whatever, who were in the middle and then working or whatever it is? Maybe you think we didn't work hard enough, but what were you thinking in your space as a South African as these things evolved and happened in front of your eyes? I'd love to
That's what I'm trying to get.
to listen to those stories because they might be helpful.